In 1628, a pope signed a document. The document was not a treaty. It was not a declaration of war against a foreign nation. It was, in plain terms, an order. Find these paintings, remove them from the walls, and burn them. The paintings were of God, specifically of God's face, or rather, God's faces, 3 of them pressed together on a single head, 4 eyes, 3 noses, 3 mouths, 1 divine gaze pointing in every direction at once. This is the trifacial Trinity, the Vultus Trifrons, the three-faced God, and it is one of the strangest, most quietly terrifying images in the entire history of Western art. It appeared on the walls of cathedrals, inside illuminated manuscripts, on the altarpieces of Florentine churches, in the refectories where monks ate their silent meals. Donatello made one. Andrea del Sarto made one. Fra Filippo Lippi painted one, small and sun-like, floating in the sky above St. Augustine. And then, the Vatican ordered them burned. In this video, let's sit with this image. Really sit with it, and ask what exactly terrified the most powerful religious institution in human history so much that it reached for a torch. The answer is stranger than you might expect. Let's begin with a problem that is, in truth, ultimately unsolvable. How do you draw God? Not just any God, the Christian God specifically. A God who is simultaneously 3 persons and 1 being. The Trinity is the central paradox of Christian theology. The early church largely avoided this paradox. When artists needed to depict the Trinity, they reached for scripture and found safe ground. The story of Abraham entertaining 3 mysterious strangers in Genesis 18. Andrei Rublev painted this in 1411. 3 angels of identical beauty seated around a chalice. The Trinity is only implied, the mystery never declared, but mystery has its limits. Artists wanted to go further. They wanted to actually show the thing. It tried 3 identical male figures. Safer, yes, but something was off. It had a faint whiff of polytheism about it. Until, somewhere in 12th century France, someone tried something different. They put 3 faces on 1 head. It began in manuscripts, French, small, marginal, almost whispered. Then it spread throughout Europe, slowly, then all at once. By the 15th century, the trifacial Trinity had reached Florence, and it attracted the attention of the greatest sculptors and painters of the age. Donatello placed one on the marble tabernacle he made for the outside of Orson Michel Church around 1423. If you walked through Florence in the 1420s, you would have passed it, stopped, looked. Around 1438, Fra Filippo Lippi took a different approach. In his vision of St. Augustine, the trifacial Trinity doesn't dominate the canvas. A tiny, radiant figure floating in the sky, Augustine gazes up at it. The image is, to use a word that would have horrified the theologians, weird. And in the early 16th century, Andrea del Sarto painted one at San Salvi, on the great arch above the Last Supper. From high, it presided over the scene below as the image of everything those 12 men were still trying to understand. One story goes that when the troops of Charles V sacked Florence in 1530 and demolished everything around it, the soldiers could not bring themselves to take down the wall that held Del Sarto's fresco. They left it standing. The Trinity watched as they left. The theologians watched all of this. They had been watching for a long time, actually, and they were not happy. In Florence, in the mid-15th century, Archbishop Antoninus put the argument into words. The trifacial Trinity, he said, was disordered. It was inappropriate for the divine. 3 heads belonged to monsters, to Cerberus, guardian of the underworld, to the Chimera, to the nightmare creatures that haunted the edges of medieval maps and bestiaries. To show God's face fused into a three-headed form was not to elevate the divine, but to drag it into the company of beasts. The Latin term the theologians reached for was monstrum in natura rerum, a monster in the order of natural things, a violation of the categories by which God had organized creation, something that should not exist. But there was a deeper anxiety. You see, this three-faced image bore an uncomfortable resemblance to pre-Christian iconography. Take the Greek goddess Hecate, for example, or Janus, the Roman god who wore two faces, and other multi-headed gods who populated the religious art of ancient India, Celtic Europe, Egypt, traditions reaching back before recorded theology. The Church had worked very hard for a very long time, constructing a careful border between itself and that older world, between the one true God and the many gods it had displaced. And yet here was an image that looked, in certain lights, uncomfortably like the thing on the other side of that border. For centuries, the Church had fought, sometimes literally with armies, over the precise nature of the Trinity. The central ruling was this: three persons, one being, not three masks worn by the same God. To a trained eye, three persons fused, sharing eyes, skull, and breath, was modalism, a heresy condemned in the 4th century. There was, however, a defender, Saint Teresa of Avila. She argued that for the ignorant, her word, not mine, the three-faced image was actually useful, that since the uneducated faithful couldn't follow the abstract theological arguments, they needed something they could see. Show them three faces, here are three persons. Show them one head, here is one God. Simple, effective. It was, as defenses go, sincere, even if slightly condescending, and it would prove to be, in the most unexpected of ways and places, prophetic. From 1545 to 1563, the Council of Trent formed as the Catholic Church's great response to the Protestant Reformation. Among the many things it addressed was religious imagery, what was acceptable and who had authority over interpretation. As Protestant reformers attacked the Catholic tradition of sacred art as idolatry, the Council of Trent pushed back. Images were not idols, but vessels, a language for those who could not read to pursue the divine. But it also drew a clear line. On December 4th, 1563, the Council issued its decree on sacred art. It condemned unorthodox and monstrous images. And 65 years later, in 1628, Pope Urban VIII signed a decree. The three-faced Trinity, he declared, was heretical. Representations were to be removed from churches and burned, not archived, not relocated. No. The same institution that had commissioned the Sistine ceiling, that had funded Raphael and Bramante, that had made Rome the visual capital of the Christian world, ordered that certain paintings of God should be destroyed by fire. This is why so few survive today. The ones that survived did so largely because they were in churches and rural parishes too distant from Rome. Others survived because they were painted over, faces hidden under layers of gesso, their existence forgotten until a restorer in the 20th century worked the paint back and found something extraordinary underneath. The church, however, was not finished. In 1745, Pope Benedict XIV banned the trifacial Trinity again. The fact that a second ban was necessary tells you everything you need to know about how well the first one worked. So there it was. Twice, popes ordered this image burned. But the fires didn't work. The image simply went where the Vatican's reach couldn't follow, into the silence of the European mountains, and eventually thousands of miles away to a new world that would use it for something much darker than a prayer. Now we arrive at the most extraordinary chapter in this story, and the one I find myself returning to most often. When Spain colonized South America in the 16th century, it brought its priests and its paintings with it. The mission of conversion was both spiritual and political. To bring the indigenous peoples into the church was to bring them into an order that justified Spanish dominion. And in order to do this, images were essential. Language failed. Images didn't. You could not explain the Trinity to someone who didn't speak your language, but you could show them a face, and then another face within the face, and then a third, and the image would do a kind of work that words could not. Especially in a new world, which had its own complex iconographies of multiplicity, with its pantheon of faces that appeared in different forms simultaneously. In such a world, the heretical trifacial Trinity would have been quite profoundly recognizable. And so it was, the missionaries reached for the trifacial Trinity. The same image two popes had ordered, removed and burned in 1628 and again in 1745. In the New World, it was resurrected as a teaching tool, painted on large canvases and hung in churches where indigenous Andeans came to learn what Christianity was. 4 eyes, 3 noses, 3 mouths, 1 divine being. Saint Teresa was right in the end, just not where she expected. The uneducated faithful who would benefit from the simple visual logic of 3 faces and 1 head were not the peasants of Spain. They were the people of the Andes for whom the Spanish Church had just destroyed an entire civilization in the name of the same God it was now introducing with an image it had declared heretical. Twice. There is no word in Latin for this particular irony. There should be. When the ban finally arrived in the New World, some of the trifacial Trinity paintings were painted over, like this one attributed to Gregorio Vasquez. The artist bypassed the censorship ban by painting hair over 2 of the 3 faces. It was only almost 400 years after its creation, during a restoration attempt, that the true image was discovered. Still there, looking. You're looking at it right now, on a screen, in a room, at a moment in history that will pass, eventually, into someone else's memory. An image 2 popes ordered, burned, that watched them grow old and die, and was never supposed to reach you. Yet, there you are, and here they are. 4 eyes, 3 noses, 3 mouths, looking in all directions, for 400 years. And it will still be looking when you look away, actually.